I'm with Herzl Makov from the Begin Center here in Jerusalem. Now, Herzl, what is the Begin Center?
The Begin Center is the national project to commemorate the sixth Prime Minister of Israel, that also considered to be one of the forefathers of the State of Israel, with David Ben-Gurion.
And when was the center started and why was it started?
We opened in 2004. Actually, we started to work to establish it in 93, a year after Menachem Begin died. And it was passed in the Knesset, a law to commemorate Menachem Begin, because it was a consensus in Israel, which, as you know, it's not likely to happen, a consensus that he had a very important role in the history of the State of Israel. So they decided, our parliament, to commemorate his activities, his biography, and his legacy.
And tell us a bit about Menachem Begin.
Well, Menachem Begin, in a way, his story is symbolized the story of the Jews in his generation. He was born in East Europe, in exile, to a very conservative, traditional Jewish family. He grew up getting Jewish education, belonged to a Jewish and Zionist youth movement, became the leader of it, and then the World War II broke, and he ran away and was arrested by the Russians. Then, because of the agreement between England and Russia, which included establishment of a free Polish army, he was released from the Soviet prison and came to Palestine then. Here, he became, after a very short period, the commander of the Irgun, the underground that fought the British mandate in order to achieve sovereignty and independence to the Jewish state, according to the original British mandate that was given by the League of Nations in 1922. And after the War of Independence, he decided to join the political life, served 29 years as the head of the opposition, and in 1977, he became the Prime Minister of the State of Israel. And his term of 6 years was a very intensive and a shaping term in the history of the State of Israel.
When you tell about his story, it sounds like you're reading some pages from the Bible.
Yeah, in a way, sometimes I'm saying it's a story of a biblical hero, or if you want, a Greek tragedy or something like that.
Now, he was a commander in the Irgun. Was that the prelude to the current-day IDF?
In Israel or in Palestine, at that time under the British government, there were a few Jewish underground. There was Haganah, which was the most established one and the biggest. And there was the Irgun, and there was the Stern Group. The Irgun was built as an army, actually. It was like they established the guerrilla fighting. So there was a lot of impression or inspiration, I would say, to the Israeli army from the Irgun. But the nuclear of the IDF is more the Haganah and the Palmach.
Now, of course, in one sense, he was fighting the British. How did that make the British respond to him later on when he became Prime Minister?
Well, in that sense, it was good that it took almost 30 years, so the British had time to relax. But in the beginning of the State of Israel, they didn't like him at all. They didn't let him go to Britain. We also have correspondence between the British government to the U.S. government not to let him come to the United States because he is a terrorist. He was number one on the list of wanted people in Palestine at that time.
So from a so-called terrorist to the Prime Minister.
Yeah, he never saw himself as a terrorist, but as a freedom fighter. But it's not only, just title that you give yourself. He had a distinction between terrorist and fighter because his organization never attacked civilian target, only military and government attacked. Of course, when you fight, there are casualties of innocent people, but always the target of his struggle was either governmental target or military bases, military objects.
Now you have the centre here. Tell us a bit about the centre of the museum. What can you see here?
Well, in the center of the center, there is the museum that tells the story of his life, from his early childhood to the end of his career as a prime minister. But also we bring two other, I would say, layers to his story. One, which I called the type or model of leadership that Menachem Begin brought to us, a leadership that I called value-driven leadership. It's not the poll of yesterday night or not the headline of tomorrow newspaper that drive his decisions, but a set of values that we bring to the audience and we show. And you can see that all his life was a struggle to fulfill those values. You can agree or disagree with the values, but you see that that was his motive. And the other thing is what we now can learn from his legacy. What is relevant to Israel and to the Jewish people and to the world nowadays from his legacy.
And what sort of programs do you run here?
Besides the museum, which is open to the mass public, we have educational programs. We have programs about leadership, again, value-driven leadership. We try to bring it to every person's life. We all kind of leaders, whether you are a journalist, whether you are a teacher, whether you are running a commercial business, you are a leader. And how the set of values affect your way of behavior and so forth. So it's an example how we take Menachem Begin legacy to our life. And we have other educational programs, and we have, again, for example, Menachem Begin as a prime minister used to learn every Saturday night the portion of the Bible that is read in the synagogue at the same day. And it was a circle of people who brought. So we here, again, every Thursday night, we have a study of the Bible to, again, bring his legacy to the daily life of the people today.
And what sort of archives do you have here?
The archive are including all the documents in writing, audio, video, that concerning Menachem Begin. Again, from his early childhood, we had to go to Belarus now. The town that he was born, Brest, is now in Belarus. So we went to their archive to get all the documents about his family, about his early childhood. We gather archive from all his chapters in life. Because Menachem Begin, he didn't care so much about commemorate himself. So he didn't have an organized archive. We had to do a lot of research to get all those papers.
Now his family were murdered during the Holocaust. Is this something that drove him to succeed?
And no doubt that the Holocaust was a very influential object in his life and in his policies, in the view world that he had. It started from the personal story about the murder of his father and mother and brother, the close family, but also what he have seen happen to the Jewish people when we didn't have a state, when we didn't have an army to defend ourselves. And a lot of principles of policy, of strategy that you find out during his life, you can root it to this period in the Holocaust.
And how important was Menachem Begin to the State of Israel?
In a way, the State of Israel that you see today is the work of Menachem Begin. As I said, his term was very acting. We can start with the peace treaty that he brought with Egypt, which was the largest enemy state that we had, that all the wars of Israel between 48 to 77 until Menachem Begin came to power was initiated by Egypt. And by the way, since then, we didn't have a war with an Arabic state because Egypt was leader of Arabic world. So the peace changed the geostrategic situation of Israel for sure. And then he changed our society. We were a socialist, very centralist society and economy. He brought the liberal society, liberal economy to us, And that drove Israel up regarding our status in the world, regarding economy and other elements. But I have to mention that although he was for a free market, he was very sensitive to social justice. He believed in social justice. He said, we have to create a free market, but also the role of the state is to make sure that to the lower classes, economy-wise, the state is going to take care of them.
And of course, with the peace deal, he won the Nobel Peace Prize as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he won the first peace prize, the Nobel Peace Prize in Israel for the outstanding achievement of getting peace with Egypt. He and President Anwar Sadat of Egypt both got the prize in 1978.
Why do you do what you do here?
Personally, I believe very much that worldview of Menachem Begin and model of leadership is very relevant to the issues, to the challenges that Israel and, in a way, the world is facing. So I believe that it's a mission to bring those values and to the next generation of the State of Israel.
Did you ever meet him?
Yeah, I had the privilege of meeting him when I was a child. I lived in a small moshav, which was the first moshav of the Irgun people. So he came to visit a few times. I even have the privilege of being a waiter to his table when there was some celebration. I was 15 and they didn't hire a professional, so I had that privilege. And then I met him once when he was a prime minister. I was in the army at that time. More than that, I didn't have the privilege to work with him or to learn from him personally.
What is your hope for the future for the museum, the center here?
I hope that we will continue to succeed in the work that we are doing, because when I compare the other centers in Israel, thank God we are doing very well regarding the public that are coming, regarding the quality of the programs that we give to the people. So I hope that God will give us the guidance to continue and to spread the word of Menachem Begin.
And you've got a great location here as well, just looking outside your window, you can see the old city walls just next to the old city.
No doubt that the location is one of the greatest points here. We invested a lot in the view.
And what's your website for people who'd like to know more about the place?
Yes, of course, we are in the web and in the digital world. We have Facebook, and our site is the Begin Center in Jerusalem.
Okay, Herzl, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul.